Hi, everyone. I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm here today with Eric Newman, the executive producer of the six-part Netflix biographical crime drama Griselda, starring Sofia Vergara as the notorious Colombian drug queenpin, Griselda Blanco. Eric, let's go back to 2015. You're the
Yeah.
showrunner for Narcos, and Sofia Vergara from Modern Family invites you to her house to pitch you on her playing this female drug lord. What are your thoughts?
Um, Obviously I knew her work and I was a fan of hers. I also knew she was Colombian, which is an important distinction, because obviously, there is for people outside of the Latin community, there's a tendency to not to differentiate between, people from different countries in Latin and South America, and they are very different. To the point where, they're not just their language, but, their worldview, their relationship with America. And I knew a lot about Griselda Blanco because I had encountered her in my research for Narcos. And I was fascinated with her as a character. I knew whoever was going to play Griselda had to be a Colombian. And I also felt that if Sofia was willing to take the risk, and if you think about someone who is really good at one thing that everyone knows she can hit out of the park every time, and that thing happens to be something as difficult and as rare a gift as Sofia's gift for comedy, just the thought that she was interested in doing this was appealing. And so I went into the meeting very excited and hopeful that I would be met with a level of passion and conviction that would help make my decision very easy. And she was, from our very first meeting, which is now almost 10 years ago, she was like, I have to do this. And to me, that is what it required for her to pull it off to the degree that she did.
I hadn't realized until I spoke to her that she had never acted before Modern Family, that was actually her first role. And I have to admit, I was a little skeptical going in that the same actress that played Gloria Pritchett was going to be able to pull this off convincingly. But I realized, about halfway through episode 2, she'd made me forget I was watching anyone but Griselda Blanco. Seems like it required, as you just alluded to, Eric, an awful lot of work for Sofia to play this role. I mean, just the 3 hours of makeup and prosthetics every day alone.
Every day. Yeah.
But she really seemed to put just her heart and soul into every frame and took this so completely seriously.
Oh yeah, she was, and she knew she needed to. It was transformative in a lot of ways for, I think, for her. And I'm glad it worked the way that it did. When you set out to do something that you think, okay, we're going to reinvent someone, or perhaps more accurately, we're going to redefine them out in the world. That, and I think that happened for her, and it was very much at the heart of our mission. We wanted people to watch this show and say, wow, can you believe she did this? And that, obviously, the risk involved, as we touched on, to depart from a comfort zone, but also the rigors of doing this kind of part where, yes, you're in makeup for 3 hours a day. You're also playing a distasteful at times person, and you're, capable of not necessarily evil, but real complexity.
Pretty close to evil.
Close to evil, yeah. I mean, I tend to be sympathetic. I've spent so much time telling these stories that I don't think I could do it if I didn't find a level of humanity in all of them that makes calling them evil a simplification. I think that with Sofia, it was also a physical, the way she moved which I think has created some issues with her back. I mean, I feel for her, but she actually adopted a different posture for the part. She moved differently. And so that, I think, all of those things, the bar for entry was so high that it required, as I said, a real commitment, real conviction. And the Gloria Pritchard of it all, obviously, there's always going to be a little bit of Gloria Pritchard in there. But I'm, old enough to remember Bosom Buddies, with a young, comedic actor named Tom Hanks, who would go on to, win 2 Academy. There is a precedent for people in comedy moving into drama. Robin Williams, even, the first thing I ever saw, Emma Stone, who I think is one of the best working actors today, was in Easy A, was a comedy. So, Sean Penn as Jeff Spicoli in Ridgemont High. There is, a precedent for people who are able to do both. And then, or one of my favorite performances ever is Jerry Lewis in The King of Comedy,
Oh my God, isn't that the truth?
Oh, it's great.
People will tell you that was actually more closer to the real Jerry Lewis than anything he ever did in his comedy days.
I had the privilege of meeting with Jerry in I think 1997 in Las Vegas for a real proper business meeting, and he is much more that guy than the bellboy. Yeah.
Oh my God, for sure. No, there's absolutely a zillion precedents of actors who are known for comedy deciding to switch gears and become more dramatic. But in terms of the character Sofia was playing, what did you know, Eric, or learned about the real life Griselda before you were? I know that you said that you learned about her a lot while you were doing Narcos. What made her appeal to you as someone that could be the subject of a lengthy series?
It's funny, this is a, incredibly male dominated profession and culture. It is, the Latin culture is, there is a healthy amount of, or perhaps even an unhealthy amount of machismo to it. And this occupation, drug trafficker, is an exclusively male domain. And despite occasional claims to the contrary, there has never been a woman in this business who rose to this level of prominence. The fear that she instilled, the respect that she commanded, the money she made. And what was interesting about how she had been in every source of every research source, it always came back to the same thing: what a demon she was, what a bitch she was, what a terror she was. And that's never how it is. I've told stories of psychopaths or people who have been sort of dismissed as psychopaths, and there is always a contingent, and often a healthy contingent, of people who loved them and who would have followed them anywhere and who respected them. And I believed, unlike her contemporaries who were men, she never really received the benefit of an objective lens that wasn't trying to diminish a woman, to explain, how did we let this happen? Well, here's why. And so I saw that as such an opportunity. And one of the things I'm grateful for, and I take no credit for this, because if I had found a way to integrate Griselda into the Narcos, my Narcos grand plan, I would have, and that probably would have come at her expense as a character, because I think she is much more interesting than a sideshow attraction. She's a main event. And to be able to really tell the story of a mother, an immigrant, someone who had been underestimated, someone who had been abused and persecuted, and who rose above it But then, as often happens in these stories, in these rise and fall, gangster stories, is she couldn't turn it off. There was no, safe landing. And so it's the same structural rise and fall story, but what it has that's really special is the most relatable, I think, protagonist anti-hero we've ever chronicled. And that, unlike these men who are doing this for their own glory, she starts off with an incredibly noble motive, which is to protect her children and provide for them. And so to be able to play with audience sympathies, to have her then at some point kill a child, the very antithesis of motherhood, it just felt like it laid out in such a natural character, thematic, and story sense that it was a real gift, I think, to encounter it the way that I did.
And you're right. People are never any one thing. People are not exclusively monsters. Everybody's got different sides to them. And, besides what you're saying is Griselda being the mother to her kids and being this hard-nosed, don't screw with me, narcotics trafficker, she was also this earth mother to these reformed sex workers, who would put their body in front of hers to take a bullet.
Oh yeah.
She was not just a one-note monster. No. And which makes it, of course, a much more interesting project.
Yes, absolutely. And that was it has always been, in all these stories that we tell, has always been the goal of depicting someone in their humanity, right? There are, yes, there are people do monstrous things for sure, but monsters don't spring forth from the womb. They're created, and they're in reaction to their circumstances. And if you could ask them what they're doing and why they're doing it, they would have not so much an excuse, but they'd have an explanation for why they are the way they are. And I think, to be able to show that in this story is, for us, telling her story is, endlessly appealing.
I think the biggest challenge from what I can see here too, for you, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, was you're trying to really show this female drug lord as really kind of a story of female empowerment, more than just straight up criminality, which absolutely is a challenge, because everything we think about these people, especially when they're men, is that they're just ruthless, horrible killers. But it really is kind of much more an intimate character study of this woman and her many sides.
Yes, and I think that men are celebrated for their venality or their their lethalness, their toughness, hardness, and women aren't. Women are that's threatening particularly to men. One of the things that the tightrope you have to walk is, you gotta always be able to get the audience back, and obviously if you have, Wagner Moura, who's behind me here, as Pablo Escobar, he blows up an airplane in one episode and kills 140 innocent people, but you get him back a couple episodes later because, you see him with his children and with his, setting a bunny loose into the wild. I mean, it's a challenge. I think with Sofia, one of the things that she brings to the part is that she is so lovable. That's where the Gloria Pritchard part plays. It's in the, I know her and I like her, and she is one of the most, I think, likable actors in the business. You instantly, you're like, oh, you know what, I'm in her corner. And then for us to take her on this journey that plays with audience sympathies, where they're with you. God, these she's not the bad guy. These guys around her are the bad guys. And then at some point when she crosses over, which is, in episode 5, you realize she's gone too far.
She became everything that she loathed.
Yes. And that's, that's kind of the tragedy. is, what you need to do to rise above, get out from under it is often fatal. And that was her, and the realization at some point that she can no longer say it was for her children. It's interesting one decision we made that I just am so glad we did was a very early conversation Doug, Myra, and I had in the very early days. And Doug is a guy I've worked with in, Narcos, and has been a great collaborator. Andy Bias, who's the director, who's been my favorite filmmaking partner I've ever worked with. We brought a lot of what we learned on Narcos into it. But one of the things that I think makes this show work is that her death is, by the time it happens, is meaningless in terms of her death happens when she learns that her children are dead. That is her dying in a hail of bullets, or, getting, locked up forever, by that is justice. And it was very important to us that that's the thing that happens on screen. And then that her death, is a postscript, but by then she's, I imagine she's lived on as a ghost, as someone, a mother who loses their children. It's something important that we, in Narcos, even when these men died, there was always a woman there in the background who was going to raise the kid. The kids are going to, yes, their father's going to die. They're going to be okay, but they're going to be okay to the degree that they can be given their childhood. But in this case, she was it. And her investment in her kids was total. And to find that they died because of who you were, I think that's very much the right ending.
Absolutely. And then on the other side of this story, Eric, you have the investigator, June Hawkins, played by Juliana Aiden Martinez, and her pursuing her. And she has her own story. And just to see the two of these stories kind of clash and combine was an interesting way to do it.
Yes, thank you. You always sort of want the opposing forces. But what was really interesting with sort of when we discovered June, we'd read about her in a couple places, and again, reasonably unsung given what she did and what she was a part of. Again, because a woman in that business, law enforcement, what they had a lot in common. The 70s, early 80s Miami Police Department was not dissimilar to the 70s, 80s narcotics culture, in that women were relegated to the background. And when we found June, we went to see her in Tennessee, where she lives now. Her take on it was really interesting. Like, here's someone that of course, it's my sworn obligation to pursue them and bring them to justice, but I kind of relate to her a little bit in that here is someone who is victim of the same persecution, that she endures the same diminishment that I do. And I think that was a really interesting angle. And she was June Hawkins was a great help, and Juliana is spectacular in the show.
But you're right, both women are victimized by the same macho sexist cultures.
Yeah, and they're smarter. They're smarter than they get credit for being.
Just before we wrap here, Eric, I'm wondering, from studying the real life Griselda so much, did you come to better understand why she did what she did?
I think yes.
It's almost like a Walter White question.
Yes, there is a what Walter White, the great reveal that he did it for himself, and this sort of fear of insignificance that humans have. I'm never surprised by that there is a human reason for everything anyone does. And it might not be a good reason, it might not be an excuse, it might just be an explanation. I think that I think also America does stuff to you, to your, your head, whether you're born here like I was, or you come in from somewhere else, and you look at just how much wealth there is out there, how important it is to people to accrue it, and how really, if you don't have it, you really find yourself in a small, defenseless place. I think I was, I tend to find sympathy for anyone on earth, even the worst of us. And I think in Griselda's case, I feel like the best thing that we could have done was show her as someone that in the beginning you could root for a minute. There isn't a, I'm just going to go and kill a bunch of people and do, it was designed with the best intentions in mind, and it quickly deviated from that, but so I think I suppose, and this is a testament to Sofia's performance, I didn't think I'd like her as much as I did. And I love her. I felt, I'll tell you, when I saw Sofia about a week after we wrapped, and I looked at her, and it was Sofia, beautiful, Sofia. And I said, where's the other girl? I miss her. I think we all sort of fell in love with Griselda in her prosthetics, in her, and I sort of meant it. I was like, I love, you're beautiful. I love you, but where's the other, So, that was my kind of great takeaway.
Excellent. Well said, sir. We're going to leave things there. All 6 installments of Griselda are available to stream over Netflix. Eric Newman, best of luck to you this Emmy season and every season. And thanks for joining us at Gold.
Right. I hope I see you again soon. Thank you so much.